Time you win, it's a good game. Was it pretty? No. Was it wonderful? No. But I'll tell you this as a football fan. Here's what would encourage me as a Giant fan and scare me if I'm competing with them or if I'm a Jet fan. Defense travels. Mm-hmm. And over the last 2 weeks, when you look at the renaissance of the New York Giants, and we'll talk about the offense and the stuff they need to work on and the quarterback situation as the show rolls on, but you need to play defense. And over the last 2 weeks against the Buffalo Bills and certainly yesterday against Washington, this looks like a completely different unit than the one, Tiki, that was missing tackles left and right and looked like a flawed unit. Now, all of a sudden, over 2 weeks, and really 3 out of 4 weeks, when you include how they played against Seattle and some of the turnovers they forced against Miami, all of a sudden the Giants have an identity.
Yeah, they do. And I hate to make excuses, but there are excuses that are easy that you're starting to see now, at least from earlier in the season. They had a very young defense, 2 rookie corners starting. One of them played at Old Dominion University, Trey Hawkins. You had Adoree Jackson moving into the slot, something he hadn't done previously. You had you had a secondary that was new with Pinnock being, taken over for Julian Love, who's now out in Seattle. Like, it just felt very new and different, but Wink didn't change. Wink was like, all right, we're bringing everybody. We're blitzing at the highest rate, or second highest rate, I believe it is at this point, because they didn't blitz at all against the Buffalo Bills when they played well against them as well a couple weekends ago. But Wink didn't change what Wink does simply because he had guys that didn't know what he was doing behind him. And all it took was a little bit catching up to the NFL speed and the NFL mindset of Wink. And this defense is starting to play great. Most importantly, against a bad offensive line. I know we've talked a lot about how bad the Giants' offensive line is. The Washington Commanders might be worse on aggregate because their left tackle, Sadiq Charles, their right guard, or the left guard, Sadiq Charles, their right guard, Sam Cosmi, and their right tackle, Andrew Wiley, are top 5 in pressures allowed. I know we talk about Evan Neal all the time, right? And, Glowinski and Bredesen, who's playing center, even though he's a guard. The Commanders were worse, and it allowed Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams, these guys who hadn't had sacks on the season yet, to really start to eat against Sam Howell, who's been taking sacks all year, but really took a bunch of them in this game.
You got to take advantage of your opponent. Washington is a flawed team, but they've been an up-and-down team. A couple weeks ago, they came very close to knocking off the Philadelphia Eagles. They're a division rival. They're a team you were trailing by 2 games, a peer-tier team, as you defined it, and you have to kick their ass. That's what you have to do.
They didn't do that. They didn't do that.
Well, they did it defensively, I thought.
Yes, they did do it
offensively. They
left 2 touchdowns on the field.
I get it.
Easily. Kayvon Thibodeaux's interception, he might have scored. It certainly would have led to a touchdown opportunity, and then the Saquon fumble.
Sure, and a missed field goal.
Yeah, and then the mixed field goal, but not even counting the Sterling Shepard drop punt, which gave them the only drive, except for the last one, that they got organically into the red zone.
Yeah, I'm not thinking this team can go on a run because their offense has been more efficient over the last few weeks because they're still not scoring enough points. I'd be encouraged because this defense is coming together because they're getting pressure on the quarterback. And despite what's said around here, the slander of Kayvon Thibodeaux sort of needs to stop. Because despite him dropping a pick 6, which naturally is going to get all the attention in the world, Kayvon Thibodeaux over the last 4 weeks has been getting his ass to the quarterback.
Yeah, you're right.
And isn't that what we all want? So instead of talking about him as if he's a bust and talking about him as, can you believe he dropped a pick 6? Yeah, he dropped a pick 6, and it was bad. But he's doing what you did when you drafted him. He's getting to the quarterback.
Yeah, you know why he dropped the pick 6?
Thinking too much?
No. He's a freaking defensive end.
Oh, that too.
He's not a wide receiver.
Yeah, but still, that was an easy one.
He took a peek to the end zone, too.
It is what it is. And it's funny. I said that on the broadcast, Sean. I was like, you got to score before you celebrate.
But you know what? I got to give Kayvon credit. I did not know about this. Sean was at the game. Obviously, you were at the game. And sometimes when you're at these games, you see things and you hear things that we're not lucky enough to see on TV. Apparently, after he dropped the pick 6, Sean was telling me, he was practicing during one of the TV timeouts, catching a football and then waving to the crowd as if to say, hey, guys, I'm sorry. I'm working on it.
Yeah, he got a big applause down in the corner of the end zone. We were waved up at everybody. He caught 5 straight balls after that. It was pretty funny.
Look, I don't mind it. You have 5 sack and a half, and now 5.5 on the season, I believe it is.
Tied for 9th in the league in sacks.
5.5 on the season. He had a sack and a half yesterday. He was disruptive. He forced. I mean, there was that one almost. No, it was. They actually called it intentional grounding. It wasn't. It won't count as a sack, but it was a sack. Kayvon Thibodeaux made Sam Howell not want to take another hit and threw the ball away, which obviously was a loss of down and loss of 10 yards. It made it 2nd and 20. So I nothing but respect for what Kayvon is doing, especially in the face of all of the negativity surrounding him. I think people are taking a narrative from a year ago and translating it onto this season and looking at the lack of wins and heaping that on him as a failed draft pick. It's just not fair.
No, it's not true.
He's actually playing really good football.
Look, I think we experience this sometimes. Leonard Williams, ironically, who's now on the Giants, experienced this with the Jets, with guys like me and Beningo back in the day. He was always a good player for the Jets, but we had this huge bar for him that he never hit. And so we always talked about him in this kind of negative way. And oddly, Kayvon Thibodeaux is this lightning rod. There's certain athletes that come to town, and for whatever reason, they're like a lightning rod for criticism. And maybe it's because Kayvon's flashy and he talked a big game. But if you watch him over the last 4 or 5 weeks, he's finally doing what every Giant fan was screaming about he wasn't doing over the first few weeks, and that's hitting the quarterback.
Yeah.
And you combine that with Dexter Lawrence, who played great yesterday, and Bobby Okereke, who's been hot lately. All of a sudden, and young corners who are looking as if now they have NFL experience.
Micah
with the way they played.
McFadden.
Micah McFadden's been all over the place. Here's why I look at the Giants as now an emerging threat, as a team that can go on a run. It's because they have now put together back-to-back really impressive defensive performances.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the quarterback situation we'll get to, has nothing to do with the amount of points they're scoring. In fact, that's not why they won yesterday, and that's what cost them from beating Buffalo 2 weeks ago. But their defense is keeping them in games and giving them a shot to win. And with Wink Martindale coming off the year he had last year and the talent this team has on defense, I look at them now as a team that's far different than 2 weeks ago when they were lifeless and getting their ass kicked and couldn't make a tackle. All of a sudden, they're creating an identity, and that's why I view the Giants all of a sudden as a team that has a season.
Well, they can keep a game close, and that's what matters. And that's kind of what they did all of last year. They kept games close, and then they had someone either offensively, usually it was Saquon or Daniel Jones, making an offensive play that put them in position to win a football game. And defensively, they'd bend and not break. And this year, it's been better than that. It's a lot of ways, you'd want this style of defense, which isn't hold it close to the vest and let this team move into the red zone and then allow them to kick field goals as opposed to scoring touchdowns. This is week 7. 4 of the teams that they've played haven't gotten 300 yards, right? And so we think about this team differently defensively than what they're actually playing. And in a lot of ways, you have to continue to laud Wink because he weathered that early, what felt like, oh, man, this thing's going to fall apart on you. And we're going to be questioning what Wink is doing over there. He weathered that. And we asked him how he did it. He said, dude, we just keep it real. He has these open all defense, keep it real meetings. So it's not, he's coaching the linebackers or it's everybody. And he calls everybody out in front of everybody else. And it's interesting because I remember when the Seahawks were really great, that's how they were. Like they would just call everybody out public. So you couldn't escape accountability. But he also, lets guys know if you're confused, tell me in front of everybody. So there's no excuse. You can't go back around and say, well, he never told me that, because they have these meetings in the wide open. And I think over time, it creates an accountability for one another. And I think that's what we're seeing with the Giants defense. So you're right. Defense gives you a chance, no matter how good or bad your offense is playing. And the Giants defense has started to play really good the last couple of weeks.
And look, they bailed the Giants out in 2 different ways. Number 1, on special teams, because this entire game changed on the muff punt, where Sterling Shepard couldn't hold on to the football. He muffs it. Washington recovers it, and they end up in a really good field position where they're able to punch it in for a touchdown and all of a sudden make a 14-0 game. And it felt like it was 50-0 only because of how inept Washington's offense looked and how good the Giant defense looked. So they give up the touchdown, but now they've got no margin for error. And then they overcome the fact that Saquon Barkley put the football on the ground in the red zone, which was a monstrous fumble that felt like could change the game. And while the defense allowed Washington to slowly and methodically march down the field, including cashing in on a fourth down that they converted on, they made the stop when they needed to.
Yeah.
So the Giants were far from perfect. They made mistakes. And when they face the Jets next week and they face the Cowboys in a few weeks, they can't make those mistakes. Those mistakes can't happen. They were able to overcome it yesterday against Washington. But really, the muff with Sterling Shepard, and they got to get a real punt returner in here immediately.
Well, it looks like they signed someone off of the you got who
Gunnar
you got
Olszewski.
Oh, I can't
Olszewski.
stand that guy. He's a
Olszewski.
Patriot. Gunnar Olszewski guy?
Yeah,
something
first
like
team
that.
All-Pro in 2020 with the Pats.
Yeah, he's an annoying Patriot. That's a good signing then. Bring a Patriot in. That's smart. No, I'm not
Why
even
is
being...
that annoying?
Why is it? Everything about the Patriots annoys me.
I know, but if he's a good punt returner, I'll take him.
The fact I remember who he is annoys me, but I do because he was a Patriot. Good. That's a good move because you can't be sending Sterling Shepard back there. I mean, honestly,
Well, he just doesn't do it, and
it's not his job.
Exactly, and because with Eric Gray getting hurt, what did he hurt his calf? I believe.
Yeah, calf
it was.
injury.
He hurt his calf, and he dropped one early as well.
Well, I was going to say he didn't look great either.
but
He doesn't look great all year.
I know.
But just to be fair, it was windy in the stadium, and catching punts. And
Okay.
I mentioned this after Sterling's drop. Catching punts in the wind is tough because you have to square yourself up and be able to really quickly move at the last second to make sure that you're in your pocket as opposed to sideways. And on Sterling Shepard's drop, the reason he dropped it is because his feet were crooked.
By the way,
right? He wasn't square to the ball. He was sideways to the ball.
Can I give an answer to that? Because you're right. It's not easy. I'm not suggesting I could go out there right now and catch a punt. I think it was early in the game on possession 2, 3, 4, basically where Giants and Washington were trading off 3 and outs.
Yes.
And it was like, hey, this is a 3 and out contest. The Giants were getting the football at their own 10-yard line every time.
Yes.
So here's what you do if you can't catch a punt. Basically, tell your guy back there, don't even catch it. Let it bounce.
That's funny.
Because you don't, I'm dead serious because that ball being downed inside the 5-yard line, as much as that sucks, that ball, bouncing out of bounds and you get a break and it's at the 17-yard line is not as harmful as losing the football entirely.
It's funny. So, AJ, my son, who's down at Princeton, they had a big win this weekend over Harvard. And that's what he does most of the time.
Yeah.
If it's not perfect, beautifully crafted coming down into his arms, he just lets it in.
That's why I'd be a great punt returner. You could test me all day. If I see I'm not catching it, I get my ass out the way.
Yeah, you know what else would have helped us? So the guy on the other side, Jamison Crowder, not drop a punt all day. And, the Giants had him in camp and decided to keep Sterling Shepard over him.
But Jamison Crowder is he's a vet. He's been doing it for a really long time. Had a 61-yarder last week that helped them win against the Atlanta Falcons. Oh, I know.
We cut him to what? Keep Sterling Shepard to play 5 games and wave to the crowd? I mean, come on.
Sterling Shepard is the leader in that locker room.
All right.
I know he's not playing a ton, but he is one of the leaders in that. And face it, the Giants don't have layers of leaders.
Then why did we name 11 captains?
To create the leaders.
Jeez.
You're creating them.
The point is, the Giants are not a perfect team. I don't even know if they're a good team.
But you know what? It feels good to win.
Absolutely.
And when we met with them on Friday, one of the things, when we talked about the show when I talked to you guys on Friday, it didn't feel like it was depressive. It didn't feel like it was, I don't know, we suck and I can't wait till the season's over. And I asked, I was like, why is this that way? And they said, because they're all working hard, right? It's not like, when a team is going to suck on Sunday when they don't work hard.
Right.
But when you work hard and things just aren't going your way, you still want to keep working hard. And all you need is one success to create, and success, I mean a win.
Right.
You just need a win to justify all the hard work you're putting in. And I think they've just been waiting for that. And it finally happened.
Well, it's kind of crazy because we touched on this on Friday that looking back at it now, the New York Jets had an inspirational loss to a much better team, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Good point.
They lost the game. I didn't feel great about it, but it sort of felt as if it was a win for some in that room. And the Jets were able to turn it into a 2-game winning streak. They played an inferior opponent a week later in Denver. It wasn't pretty, but they beat them.
Yes.
And then they beat a really good team in Philadelphia, and now we as Jet fans feel great about ourselves. More on them later. The Giants played an even more stunningly close game than the Jets did against Kansas City by coming within a centimeter of knocking off the Buffalo Bills. As flawed as they are, more on them later. And I wonder to you on Friday, hey, can this turn in to like a moral victory that gets this team going. Now, offensively, they still have a lot of issues, more on that. But defensively, they all have gotten something going.
Yeah.
I mean, they did a great job last week against Buffalo. They did a really good job against Washington, bend but don't break on that final drive. So you start to wonder if that game against the Bills actually sort of in a weird way led to this. Because you're right about one thing, and I don't want to do much of this today because I don't think it's right, because I hate it when it happens to me. And that's taking a victory and poo-pooing it because of who you played. Mm-hmm. It's the National Football League. It doesn't matter who the wins are against.
Yes.
The Giants' record is 2-5. It is 2-5 whether those two wins were against the Niners and the Cowboys or those two wins were against whomever. It doesn't matter. Arizona and Washington. It doesn't matter. You have to win. What you look at after a win is, okay, can this lead to something? They've got to clean up the mistakes that they made yesterday. Saquon Barkley, and I know he hasn't done it a lot, cannot fumble at the 8-yard line. Can't happen. They got to clean up punt returns. They got to fix that. They can't miss field goals. They got to punch in offensive opportunities when they can. They can't drop pick sixes. They got to clean that crap up. But can they build off of this defensive performance against Buffalo and Washington? Yeah, because defense travels. And that's where, as a Giant fan, you're not maybe proclaiming Jim Fossil-like, I'm going to put my chips into the table, we're going to the Super Bowl, but can you feel at least halfway decent as a Giant fan on a Monday after that defensive performance? I know I would.
All you needed to do was win. It didn't matter how. All you needed to do was find a way to win. And defensively, they were able to do that on Washington's most sustained drive of the day. 17 plays, I think it was 7 minutes almost, whatever it was. It was a long time. A 17-play drive that Washington got all the way down to the half-inch yard line with the incompletion because, what were they, on the 5-yard line or whatever it was? They needed 4 to get the first down. Sam Howell miraculously escapes Isaiah Simmons. I don't know how he does it, and just makes a bad throw trying to put it on the back shoulder of Jahan Dotson, who probably should have caught the football, but it got broken up, right? It came down to the last moments, and then some faked injury, which anticlimactically ended the game. Which
so strange.
It was so odd.
That was so if you missed it, I don't know how you could, but maybe you were distracted. The Giants are taking kneel downs.
Yes.
Knowing, hey, there's going to be about 10 seconds left on the
10.
clock.
By the way, Matt Ryan told me that the number for the run to the back of the end zone and heave it is like 6 seconds.
Right.
So you have they couldn't do that, because they would given the ball back to Washington with a play on I
tell you what I would have done.
Line.
On third down after they took the 2 kneels, I would have had Tyrod Taylor just run around and then eventually take the safety.
Yeah, but
kill enough time.
That's true. We talked about that. The safety is the way to go, and then you squib kick it, and the
That's
clock
it.
runs out.
But what ends up happening after the 3rd and 12 kneel is a Washington player is injured. You're saying it's a fake injury.
I think it was Daron Payne.
Daron Payne?
Yeah.
And how he got hurt, acting like an idiot on a kneel down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that causes the runoff, and they don't even get the punt return with a chance to pull off a miracle.
Because there was no timeout. Because Washington didn't have a timeout. It wasn't a runoff. It was that when a player on the defense gets hurt, the play clock resets. So clock is running, and when it was.
Oh, so it gets reset, and then the Giants just say we're done.
40.
Okay.
And now there's 33 seconds left on the game.
They called it
was over.
Yeah, they called it the 4th timeout rule.
Yes.
Or whatever they said on the field.
Yes.
I'll tell you this. My son was the happiest one there because at the last 10 minutes of the Giant game, he kept staring at the clock, knowing when the clock ran to 0, he was going to play WWE 2K23 with his dad. So when I told him, I'm sorry, Jet, there's one more play, and then the fake injury occurred, oh, my God. He was partying as hard as Sean was. He's like, great. Now I can have a Hell in the Cell match. We'll get to your Giant calls coming up, 877-337-6666. Who should start at quarterback? Who will start at quarterback? Is this a real controversy? We'll address that soon. Plus, I got some tough criticism of this head coach and one of the decisions he made in this game that, again, he's not a coward, but he coached cowardly. We'll get to it coming up next. Toll-free numbers 877-337-6666.